Rainbow Push family and those that are present today, I thank you for your sacrifice in coming out on this day, June 15th, 2019. We thank God for fathers. We thank God for Father's Day. We thank God for our fathers that are home. We thank our fathers that we know. We thank God for the brothers and the sons that have stepped in on behalf of fathers. We thank God for the fathers that we might not have grown up with because of the pain that they've endured that we know nothing about. We thank God for the fathers that, I don't like the term stepfathers, I like to say the fathers that came into your life and made the difference in your life. I want to thank God for all of those men that take on a child because it's the spiritual thing to do. And that reaches out to all of the pastors and the ministers that counsel so many children, so many people that we would not even recognize. I want to thank God for some of the men that I know in my life that have been father extraordinaires. I want to thank Reverend Dr. Clay Evans. Reverend Evans, when my father was in the seminary and came here and had young children and could not talk to his biological father about receiving some funds, but Reverend Clay Evans gave them food. So my family was in a food line at one time. We thank God for the ministers that open doors and make a way for us all. On this Father's Day, I'd like to simply address a three-point issue. 1, our history. 2, our hurt. And 3, our hope. It's been 400 years since the Africans came to America, 1619 to 2019. Young people, I need you to understand this because this is where I get my source of hope and inspiration. I would be depressed if I couldn't see the big picture. The big picture. 400 years when persons were kidnapped, shackled, and brought to this country. That's very significant because a concept was introduced called chattel slavery, where you would be born into slavery and could do nothing to manumit to free yourself from slavery. That was a peculiar institution that was created in the United States of America. So where does the wealth of America come from? Why is this the deepest, biggest market in the entire world, the strongest economy? Why? Because if you had free labor for over 246 years, you too would be rich. When you look at our communities around the country, why does it appear that they're so devastated on one side of town? Why does it appear that we're poor? Does it appear that we've done something wrong, that this is a land of opportunity? Are we indeed indolent and lazy? Have we not given up and tried our best to be entrepreneurs? Well, the reason you may be broke is because the quickest way to go broke is to get robbed. When you have been robbed repeatedly, consistently, and I want to draw the timeline from 400 years until today. It doesn't stop. But we serve a mighty God, and He has not failed us, and we are here today. I saw my friend, the Honorable Judge Greg Mathis, on the internet the other day. And Judge Mathis was crying. He had tears in his eyes. And I said, oh, something's wrong. That's not the judge that shows himself like that. Now, I've seen the judge cry before, when his mother died, when his children graduate, when he got his granddaughter. But why was the judge showing a picture of himself crying? And then he texted me and says, what you doing? You watching the game? I said, yes, where are you? He says, I'm in town. I said, I'm coming over. So it was just the two of us at home, at his home that evening, watching the game. And I said, Judge, everything okay? He says, yeah. I said, I saw you crying on Facebook. What's happening? He says, you know, I was watching the documentary When They See Us. And he says in that last episode, it got to me. He says, why are they being celebrated? He said, I see everything that happened wrong and the injustice that happened to them. Those young men never should have been locked up. And we're celebrating a kind of judicial molestation. He said, it hurts. I thought I knew the judge. I've been friends with the judge for 36 years now. I saw him when he was running around saying that he wanted to be in civil rights and was an aide for my father in the Detroit area, making his way up. But then I said to myself, just how well do I know the judge? I said, Judge, I want to ask you a few questions for helping with my message on Father's Day. I said, can you tell me something about your father? And he says, you know the answer. Do you understand? I felt the pain. I said, treading very lightly, have you met him? When you see him, you tell him I ain't never seen him. Don't know him. So I see how the judge has become not just a friend, but more like a brother because he's looked at my father as his father. Our history, 400 years, where you could not have your parents' name. I had the privilege of being in Austria to stand in for my father with Prince Alfred Liechtenstein in Austria just 3 weeks ago. And when I was talking to His Serene Highness Alfred Liechtenstein, I asked him about his family's history and this beautiful plot of land he had on the hill. I said, Prince, how far can you trace your family's lineage? He says, we can go back to the 12th century. When I think of the Judge Mathis, and I see him proudly posting the picture of his family at Thanksgiving and graduations and his children and grandchildren, his family's history and lineage starts at that table today. Can't trace it back 50 years. Our hurt is real. When you've been denied education, opportunity, employment, when you've had to stand and let other people see you take the arrows in your back so you can protect your wives, your women, so that they can have careers and you end up at home unemployed. People say, oh, black men ain't this, they ain't that. I want to just speak to you for a moment on the pain that the men endure. This week has been difficult trying to prepare some words for you. I've cried so much. It just hurts. And that's why black guys don't talk about it. We pick up our chin and we go forward, never looking back. The pain is real. And there's history to it. You know we're not lazy. The Europeans had to come and get us to come here to do their work. We're not the deadbeat dads. If you read your American history, the original deadbeat dads is Thomas Jefferson. Raping Sally Hemings. He didn't date her, he raped her and made a back exit door. How do you free your own children that you did not even acknowledge? George Washington has children of African descent that he never acknowledged. I just want to set the whole story straight. And that's been 400 years. We've just now been able to get our names. So ladies and gentlemen, we're doing the best we can. And when I admire all the brothers and the men that are being the fathers that they've never seen, we've never asked the question when we try to figure out what's going on with black men. How did we get to this position? We hurt, but we never talk about it. We look the other way, we make it a joke. But I've had the privilege of growing up with my father, knowing my grandfather, knowing that my father gets his name Jesse from my great-grandfather. It's like in The Lion King, I know who I am. And my children know who they are and whose they are. I remember my children playing chess in a young age, and I'm in the airport at Love Field in Dallas, and my young child is running underneath the ropes. And an officer approached him. He couldn't have been more than 5 years of age. And he said, "Come here, where are you going?" My child couldn't even talk, didn't have teeth in his mouth. And I said, "Officer, I'm the father, and there's no one here. Is there something I can help you with?" He says he shouldn't be running around. And I said, "You shouldn't be talking to him. He's a child. Man up." I said, "I've got him," and I was watching him, and if there were any other passengers around, I'd have had him closer. He's a child. So there's a fear we have of being black men, having to protect our children. I'm in the Guggenheim Museum in New York City with my child on my shoulder, like I see all the other white parents with their children on their shoulder, and the black security guard thinks it's his appointed duty to come to me to tell me to take my child off my shoulders. I said, "You got the wrong one, officer, rental cop." That's not my son, that's not my child. You're not going to do that. And before I knew it, it was 2, 4, 8, 10 or more of these security guards. I said, "I swear to God, it's not enough you they can create. Not for me and my child." When I saw that movie and I haven't been able to finish it, of when they see us, and I saw each one of those children having to confront those officers, I had to thank God again, and I cried because that's 1989, just 30 years ago. Had that been me in New York City, with the blessing that's been bestowed upon me, as soon as I can get to my dad, we're going to be walking up out of this courthouse in this police detention facility. But when you don't have that protection of your dad and your father, when your father hasn't been around the house, or when your father's been beaten down and can't pick his head up, and your father's afraid for your life, and your father doesn't know how to access ministers and activists and hit the streets and save their child, that can hurt. When my brother went to jail, and I would say it was wrong, wrong, wrong. And I'm going to keep it moving. But it was wrong. Lost his title, had to pay the funds back that nobody had disputed, didn't take a dime of federal money, went to jail, and look at every other person in there. This is why we have a Rainbow Push Forum, because free people can talk free. And as I saw what was happening to those young men, they were defenseless. But don't put that then. They got out in around 2003. Why did one of the wealthiest men in the world, Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York City, hold up their little paltry sum for another 10 years? How are you going to group all the Negroes together and pay them one time? It's 5 individual lives that you've raped and hurt and robbed. The judge reminded me they were denied the opportunity to have wives, to have children, to go to school. And you're going to pay them $5 million. I know people in New York City that make $5 million a month in bonuses. And look at how people profited off those boys' pain. Linda Fairstein.
Thank you for your support across the years. We've been in this building for 47 years. Nelson Mandela spoke here, and Harold Washington spoke here. Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. and Gus Savage and Charlotte Hayes. So many people across the years. This has been a kind of refuge, a place from which we launch great ideas. Your movements for action for registration and jobs, and just another building is about to collapse under the heavy, heavy rain and winter this
30 years later, the man that said, I'll put a bounty on their head and they should be killed, he went on to become nationally prominent and becomes our President of the United States of America. People profit off the exploitation of our children. That's our history and our pain. But let me tell you what I saw this past week as I watched the basketball game with Judge Mathis. Dad, when I looked at that game, I saw something a little different. And I was so glad to see you there. Because you were in the living room with the two of us. And what I saw there was knowing that we would be together on this day, God willing, June 15th. I saw Medgar Evers' funeral that happened in 1963, June 15th. They said that after the funeral, the young people started singing, "This Little Light of Mine." They said the young people started singing, "Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave." They said after they sang the last song that the marchers left the church and went to the funeral home where his body was going to be picked up and sent to Arlington for the burial, because he was a Vietnam veteran and a World War II veteran. He was a soldier, he says, abroad and at home, fighting for the American way of life. I saw, Dad, when we last saw Mr. B.B. King having gone down to Jackson, Mississippi, having flown back from anywhere he was around the world, Teddy, 49 out of 50 years, he always came back to honor his brother and friend, Medgar Evers. He never forgot. He did a fundraiser to keep his name alive. And now when you fly into Jackson Airport, it's the Medgar Evers Airport because B.B. King wouldn't let it die. Dad, when I saw that game the other day, I saw the Toronto Raptors with a young man of African descent as its president, tall and handsome, 48 years of age. Born in London, follow me, his mother is a medical doctor. His father is a nurse. Ladies, you can marry a nurse too. Moving on to my point. Then he moved back to Nigeria, learned soccer and so forth, and then abandoned soccer because he fell in love with basketball. Tried to get into the league, went out to Seattle, his parents let him play. And then, Dad, there was a point at which he could have stopped. He knew his dream was 1 in a million. But the coach said, I can be that 1 in a million. That's a source of inspiration for him to you. He went to work, if you follow me, as a volunteer scout for the Orlando Magic. What does that mean? He didn't get paid. He says, I'm going to find you somebody that the person you have on salary can't get, and then you'll want to pay me. He never stopped. He moved around the league, and now Toronto, the third largest city in North America. Toronto, larger than Chicago. They have the good sense to have an African of African descent to be its president. 400 years from the bottom of a slave ship to the championship in Toronto. Talk about the pain. As he's leaving the locker room, to get on the stage to celebrate with his team. A deputy and a sheriff said, you don't have the right placard on your shirt. You don't have the gold wristband. He was detained and he moved his way around the officer. The officer pushed him and he pushed him back. He knows who his father is. He has an open case pending the president of the Toronto Raptors right now in San Francisco in Alameda County. Oh, you can win and get treated like a Negro right here today. Did you see the games? Did you see a young man running, working on the field that he plays? He falls, trips, and then a belligerent woman pushes him because she had white privilege. She didn't get arrested and she just paid a paltry fine. She didn't get escorted out. Oh, we need to talk about it. Look at what happens in the NFL, where these young men say you can't play because you've smoked marijuana and marijuana is legalized in 13 states, and you've got a team owner that's dealing in illicit prostitution and sex slave trafficking, and it doesn't come on the news. When I looked at the game, I saw something. I saw two great players in Klay Thompson with his mother and his father, and he's an all-star. Sure enough, gave it his all. I saw young Steph Curry with his mother and father in the stand who married his high school sweetheart. The player life ain't for him. He says, why look around when you know what you want? This is the woman I love. Steph Curry, a devout Christian. They don't want to show you that because that makes black men look different in your eyes. They want to talk about every other black man in the NBA that's fathered many children, but they're not going to talk about Larry Bird. He got more than them. I'm sorry, I just need to exhale just to tell you what's on my mind today. I saw the Toronto Raptors, and I saw young Isaiah Thomas in this arena, this room right here, coming in our food line to get some food, who had to go from house to house every time the rent was due because his mother couldn't stay in one place. He came right in here. I saw Brother Isaiah Thomas in my mind's eye when he tried to buy the Toronto Raptors. 15 years ago, the arena and the team for $110 million. He raised the money. He knew the value. He did his due diligence. And when he got to the closing table with the money, the owner said, you know, you're going to be the first Negro, colored, black to own an NBA franchise. He says, that's got to be worth something more to you. Give me $20 million more. That's the reason Isaiah Thomas does not own the Toronto Raptors today. Isaiah saw it, Isaiah wanted, he raised the money and the rules changed on Isaiah Thomas. When I looked at that game, I saw black excellence on the field. When I tell you who won the game, we won the game. We could not lose. When I saw Brother Gasol shooting on the outside, a young man from Spain whose brother's got 2 championship rings with the Lakers, and he got sent into the Siberia of basketball. When you get to Toronto, you're not supposed to play and do anything else ever again. That's the write-off team. That team was made to be the joke. But then they've got a president up there that can make serious trades and reconfigure the team. I saw Brother Dwayne Casey sitting in the background. Last year, that black man was the team coach. He laid the foundation. Oh, he won. When I look at the success of Golden State, I can see Mark Jackson. He laid the foundation. They might not have gotten there with you, but you can't get to the NBA and have a championship team in one season unless somebody laid a foundation. You just can't do it. When I saw those young men out there playing, young brother Kevin Durant, who was raised with his mother and didn't have his father's support, but he had his brothers and his mother. And when he became prominent, he reconciled, had so much love in his heart that he reconciled with his father. I saw our triumph, I saw our challenges all playing out on that court side. Then I went over to the Toronto Raptors. And when I saw Mr. Fred Van Fleet, and I realized his father had been killed, and somebody's talking about they don't have the experience and they don't understand the pressure. I wish I could have stuck my hand through the television set and grabbed the mic from the commentator. You don't really know where these brothers come from. Playing in this arena, flying private planes, this is the good life for them. When I saw Toronto Raptors and I saw Ibaka, number 9, I believe that's his number when his mother was killed, I said, oh no, he's ready. When I saw brother Kiwi Leonard, knowing his father had been killed, when I saw Pascal on that court side, knowing his father got killed when he was 20 years old, when he had been planning on getting into the priesthood. And Brother Pascal writes his name, his father's name on his shoe before every game. Oh, I wish you understood the pain, the history, and the triumph of African American men. We came here with no names. They raped and robbed us and didn't have the protection of the law to take care of your daughter. I'm not going to cry right now, boy, but my little daughter. And this goes on for centuries. I asked one young brother, I said, tell me something about your father, Dad. Young brother Carson down in Decatur. He says, oh, I wasn't raised with him. He says, Jonathan, true story. I was about to get into a fight. And my mother steps outside and says, you all stop that fighting. She says, that's your brother. He says, really? He says, you know my father? He says, yeah, he's over in Springfield. He said, I don't want anything from him. I just want to meet him, just want to see him. Dad, they go over to Springfield. He wants to see his father. Walked in the house. Man's watching TV. He calls his name out. He looks at him and keeps watching television. I've cried so much this week listening to these stories. I asked the judge about his father. Don't know him. But one thing they have in common, they were kicked out and left out. But they found a way to call my father their father, and they got helped out. When I went to Decatur just 2 weeks ago, the last time I had been there was 1999. And I could see this young man, Reverend Courtney Carson, as the vice president of the school board that did not want to let him come back to school. God is amazing. We're going to wrap this up now, but we've had our history. Like my father always said the story, if you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know one thing for certain, it didn't get there on its own. We did not get into this condition on our own. When you look at the labor unions that lock us out, billions of dollars of work at O'Hara, and you've got these white women-owned firms that say they're the minorities and black folks can't get any work. We need to talk about it. When you got everybody gets put in front of the needs of black people, we're citizens too. We need to talk about it. You talk about babies in the border in cages. Every senator talks about it. That's the right thing to do. But you never say a word about the babies in cages in New York City that got locked up by Donald Trump and Linda Fairstein. You talk about D-Day and 75 years later and the Marshall Plan where they want to build something and rebuild Europe, but you don't want to talk about 400 years later and a program to help rebuild what you destroyed that God has saved in America. Listen, I'm all cried out. I'll never look at brothers the same again. I've been so blessed to have my father and to know my grandfather. And any time I had a problem, anything that I got into, any mischievous that I had been a part of, I knew I could be forgiven because I had the providence of my father and the protection. Anytime there was a problem at the school, I wanted my mother to show up because she would drive the station wagon and come up there by herself. But when my father came up, he came up rolling deep. 3, 4 cars and a whole bunch of people. Everybody in the school looking out the window, and they knew I was in trouble again. Oh my God, when you got your father in your life, and you see presidents and they have the military and spaghetti and hats and they've got all the salutation, and I see a man that gets this Bible and will get on a plane with no security and go see Muammar Gaddafi, will get this Bible and get on a plane and go see Hafez Assad and get U.S. prisoners out of jail. When I see this man that'll get this Bible and go see President Saddam Hussein in his palace and tell them we don't need to have a war to bring back 400 people that were held hostage. When I see this man, just because he's a black man, he won't get his due, won't get his credit. One of the greatest Americans of all time, one of God's greatest children, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.